about this new walking group that's being set up in the Echuca area. The idea is to meet new people, certainly through walking groups, a really great way of getting to know people and getting to know your town. And when you move to a new place, it can be hard to connect with that community. My next guest who set up this walking group recently moved to Lockington. So started this walking group to connect local LGBTI people and their allies. Vin Jarrett has an interesting story behind how he started the group, and he joins us now. Morning, Vin. Welcome to Central Victoria.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on here. So,
An honour. Oh, quite that way, but like welcome along. No, I'm sure it's an honour to live in Central and
thanks.
Northern Victoria, though. When did you move to Lockington?
So about 7 weeks ago. So when the curfew went down in Melbourne, I packed my car that night and came up. So it was bit difficult to be in Melbourne for the entire lockdown. But it's Lockington's such a beautiful community, and it's a small community, and it is so community focused, and that's what I love about it. Like it's so there's so many things here to do and see, and and I'm all about community. So this was the perfect little town for me to move to.
What brought you there
So.
specifically?
I definitely needed a life change. There are just, Melbourne is very fast paced, and I don't necessarily like the fast pace, and I got stuck in a rut in Melbourne. So it was very hard to, when you're surrounded by the hustle and bustle of everything in Melbourne, it's kind of sometimes hard to focus on, your mental health and fitness and your everyday life, and you just have so many other added complexities to life in Melbourne, that comes along with the hustle and bustle. And I just wanted the slower pace and to be able to hear my own thoughts really, and focus on that. And yeah, it was just a really great opportunity for me to be able to move up to Lockington. So
So was it a COVID realization then, or were you feeling that way
it
before the
was.
pandemic?
It was definitely, COVID was definitely my reason for getting out of Melbourne. Well, my excuse really. Um, but for many years, life in Melbourne, it wasn't all what it's cracked up to be. And normally, people from the country move to Melbourne, but I kind of did the opposite. And yeah, so but I definitely realized a lot during the COVID lockdown, and I just needed a massive life change, and that was, just I suppose the result of the lockdown.
Wow, well, you're not the only one to move from the city to the
No,
country, and that, yes, it's a kind of a bit of a change, isn't it? Because usually people from small
it
towns
is.
can't wait to get out and move to move to a bigger regional centre or move to the city. So, look, welcome to the country. I do have to ask you, being a
Thank you.
city boy, about wearing
Yeah.
thongs and where you can and can't wear thongs. So you're setting up a walking group, obviously. You want sensible shoes on the walking group. We'll talk about that in a tick, but you're moving to the country,
Yeah.
Vin. You've come from the city. Tell us what you think thong etiquette should be.
Well, I mean, isn't it the most Aussiest thing to wear thongs, and have a Barbie? So it would, I mean, yeah, I suppose it's weather permitted, isn't it?
So weather's the only
I would
thing. What
think.
about the actual event? What about, say,
Well,
the
I
more
mean,
formal dinner? Should you be allowed to wear thongs?
no, I guess that would be, no, probably not. Although I have seen some guys at weddings rocking some thongs, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's yeah,
I mean,
interesting question.
I think we've established this morning that anything goes for some, but is frowned upon by others.
Y-
So
Yes,
yes,
that's right.
there's a bit of a dichotomy going on the thong thing. If you're just tuning in and you're wondering why we're talking about this, the Mount Alexander Shire Council have stood up for the thong during deliberations over their new citizenship dress code policy. So you are now allowed to wear thongs. They're originally on a list of items of clothing that are not allowed at citizenship ceremonies, like obviously clothing containing racism or profanities or offensive remarks or nudity. So yes, thongs now taken off that list. They're officially permitted at citizenship ceremonies. So we're talking about this and whether you should or shouldn't. And look, speaking of Aussie Vin, of course, citizenship ceremony, Aussies becoming an Australian as such, you should be allowed to wear thongs to that ceremony. But you have been
I would have thought so.
looking at setting up a walking group. Let's turn our attention to that. You've been
Yes.
doing the walking group in Melbourne for a while. So tell us about this sort of incarnation you're hoping to get up and running in Lockington or Echuca,
Yes,
is it?
so yeah, Echuca. So it'll be based in Echuca. So it was actually the brainchild of my friend Andrew, who I'd met through Joe, who happened to be adopted, and I'm adopted as well. I was one of the 7 children who was adopted out to Australia from India with Sharu Brearley, whose real life story was made into the movie Lion. So uh, I run a lot of support groups in the adoption community on Facebook, and I run adoption dinners in Melbourne for adoptees. And so how this all came about was Andrew is a close friend of Joe's, who was my teacher at TAFE when I was doing Cert 3 in community services. So when they'd be on the phone for hours, they'd be walking and talking, and they suddenly had this idea to do a men's walking group because sometimes it's really difficult for men to be sitting in a room and talking to a professional. So getting out in the fresh air and as an added bonus, getting fit as well was their whole idea around it. And Andrew and Joe are both professionals in the mental health and fitness field, so they came up with this idea of doing a men's walking group, and so they wanted to capture this journey, and this is where I was brought on board. I run a men's support group on Facebook called the Lost Gentlemen's Club, and it focuses purely on mental health. And we talk about everything in the group that we talk about is nothing's taboo. So we can talk about, suicidal ideations. Obviously not, we talk about the thought processes, isolation, depression. And Joe and Andrew wanted to collaborate the support group with the walking group, as they've also collaborated with the Virtuous Living Centre in Melbourne. So the framework to guide the walk, our lens focus each week is guided by the Way of the Warrior, based on the book Freedom of Virtues, which has 7 virtues we live by day, which is courage, diligence, wisdom, honor, justice, and kindness. So it wasn't just about the walking, it was about connecting and helping with mental illness, isolation, loneliness, and feelings of depression. So the added bonus was getting fit at the same time. So we wanted to create a safe space to walk and talk with other men, which is now open to everyone. So the walk has been running in Melbourne for a year and a half. And when I moved up from Melbourne, I looked to see what there was up here in the way of support for mental health and fitness and support for being part of the LGBTQIA community. There is very little. So I decided to bring the walking group up with me as well and have like a subsection of the one in Melbourne and run it in Echuca alongside with the Northern Victoria LGBTQIA hub, which I also created as well. So that gives focus and support to people of the LGBTQIA community in Northern Victoria. So the walking group has collaborated with the Rochester Business Network, the Lockington Neighbourhood House, and many other local businesses around the Echuca region. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so it's all happening.
It's all like interconnected,
So
all of these different
it is.
community initiatives.
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. It's all about connection, and because in Northern Victoria or anywhere regional, I mean, I've toured outback Australia and been to some of the most remotest places in Australia, and one of the biggest things is isolation, and that on top of everything can do some crazy things in your mind. And so we definitely pulled focus on isolation and being, there between towns, which are far and near from each other. isolation is a major part of it. And, there are so many people that suffer from mental illness or, depression because of the isolation. Um, Not mental illness because of depression, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the isolation. So so we definitely wanted to pull focus for that and creating the connections with local businesses and people who, I mean, we have all different walks of life on the walk. So it's absolutely brilliant. And, we get 20 to 30 men rocking up and walking with us in Melbourne. So it's a safe place, and sometimes men can find it really difficult to be able to talk about their emotions and feelings. And we're trying to break the stigma of that. And there's many other, there are quite a few men's mental health groups in Melbourne, but up here, you pretty much got the men's sheds. So and unless you're about 50 plus, you don't get a lot of the guys between 25 and 50 that do go to these men's sheds. So,
Well, that's
we are
right.
just
They're more for
bringing
the
up.
well, they're not only for the older generation, but the older generation do tend
No,
to
that's right.
frequent the men's sheds a bit more. So this walking group, I guess you'd anticipate that kind of maybe younger demographic, though anyone's welcome. I mean, I guess that leads to my next question in terms of age. How long are the walks? How strenuous are the walks?
So in Melbourne, we walk at Saltwater Creek in Frankston, Oliver's Hill, and so that's about an hour's walk. And in within the hour, we have a half an hour break, and we sit down. There's a little spot at the rocks where the water goes, and we all sit down and we talk. We go around the group and we ask, how your week's been, and if there's anything exciting happened, or and we normally focus on one of the virtues. So we either, we just pull, like, say, courage out, and what was something that you did that took courage, or we talk about kindness and what it is to be kind, because and because it's we really strive on these virtues because they're such good virtues, but also it's like a code, the brotherhood code, so and we want to incorporate that with everyone, not just with the men. So we do focus a lot in the support group online about talking about the virtues, and we talk about
Hmm.
more in-depth conversation about mental health
Wow, look,
issues and
it
stuff. But
sounds really interesting, Vin. But we have to wrap up our chat this morning. But you're setting up this walking group. When do you plan on the first walk?
so the first walk will be mid-January. So it's
Excellent.
hoping to take off.
And how can people get
Yeah.
involved?
So we have a Facebook page online called Let's Walk Together. So the Facebook group or Facebook page, sorry, is Let's Walk Together, walking for mental health and fitness.
Lovely. Let's walk together, walking for mental health and fitness. Good luck setting it up. We must catch up closer to the date. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And very pleased that you've moved to our region. I've got a text from Bob saying Vin is a fantastic photographer as well. There you go. Vin already making a name for himself around northern Victoria, only recently having moved to Lockington. Vin Jarrad there, a walking group organiser, organising that Let's Walk Together group for Echuca.